This act of violence against his own subordinates had an immediate effect on the remaining Korthak forces. Ships that had been wavering in their loyalty suddenly made their choice. Hundreds of vessels simultaneously powered down their weapons and broadcast surrender signals. Communications Officer Minji could barely keep up with the incoming transmissions. "Captain, I'm receiving requests for asylum from over 3,000 Korthak crew members. They're asking to join us. They want to learn more about this thing called freedom." Admiral Zektar's image on the screen showed a being in complete mental breakdown. "This cannot be. The hierarchy is absolute. Order is everything. Without it, there is only chaos." "No," Captain Jinwoo replied gently. "Without it, there is choice. And choice, Admiral, is what makes us human." The battle for Earth was ending. But the transformation of an entire galactic empire was just beginning. Captain Jinwoo walked through the gleaming corridors of Peace Station, marveling at how much had changed in just 3 months. The massive space station orbited Earth like a symbol of hope, its white and silver hull reflecting the blue planet below. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see ships from dozens of different species docked at the station's ports. Former enemies now working together to build something the galaxy had never seen before. The station itself was a wonder of cooperative engineering. Human architects had worked alongside Korthak bioengineers, Andromedans with their crystal-based technology, and even the gas-breathing Nethers who communicated through color changes in their transparent bodies. The result was a structure that seemed to pulse with life while maintaining the efficiency of the most advanced machines. "Captain Jinwoo," a familiar voice called out. He turned to see Zek approaching from the philosophy wing of the station. The former admiral looked nothing like the fearsome reptilian commander who had once threatened Earth with annihilation. His scaled skin had taken on a healthier green color, and his yellow eyes now held curiosity instead of cruelty. Gone was the biomechanical armor that had made him look like a living weapon. Instead, Zek wore simple robes similar to those worn by human scholars. In his clawed hands he carried data pads filled with human writings on ethics, democracy, and individual rights. "Zek," Jinwoo smiled, still amazed at the transformation, "how are your philosophy studies going?" The former admiral's voice was thoughtful, a far cry from the harsh commands he had once barked at his subordinates. "I am struggling with a concept, Captain. Your species survived for thousands of years with every individual making their own choices. How did you not destroy yourselves? In the Korthak Empire, order prevented chaos, but humans seem to thrive in what we would consider chaos." Before Jinwoo could answer, Engineer Cho Sora approached from the Technology Exchange section. She now wore the insignia of Chief of Interspecies Technology Exchange, a position that didn't even exist 3 months ago. Her work uniform was decorated with patches from a dozen different species, each one representing a successful technology sharing project. "That's exactly what makes us strong, Zek," Sora said with a warm smile. "When everyone can choose, they choose to work together because they want to, not because they have to. Look around this station. Every being here decided to be here. No one is forced to cooperate." She gestured toward a group of former Korthak engineers working alongside human technicians to repair a damaged Andromedan crystal ship. The reptilian beings were laughing, actually laughing, at something one of the humans had said. Months ago, such a scene would have been impossible. Korthak warriors didn't laugh, and they certainly didn't work as equals with other species. "The chaos isn't a weakness," added Communications Officer Park Minji as she joined the group. She now held the title of Director of Cultural Communications, and her role had expanded far beyond managing ship-to-ship transmissions. Her job now was to help different species understand each other's cultures and ways of thinking. Minji carried a translation device that could convert not just languages, but emotional concepts between species. "It's our greatest strength," she continued. "It means we can adapt to anything. When everyone thinks differently, someone always has a new solution to any problem." The station's main observatory opened up before them, offering a spectacular view of the space around Earth. Hundreds of ships moved in organized but voluntary patterns. Former Korthak destroyers worked alongside human frigates to patrol the system. Andromedan crystal vessels shared dock space with the organic ships of species that had once been enslaved by the Empire. Navigator Yoon Hyok looked up from a data station where he was reviewing reports from across the galaxy. His new position as Director of Galactic Relations kept him busy coordinating with the growing number of species that wanted to join what was now being called the Galactic Freedom Alliance. "Captain, you need to see this," Hyok said, his voice filled with wonder. "We're receiving requests from 15 more species to join the alliance. The crystal beings of Zerion want to establish a cultural exchange program. The Veltari are asking for help setting up their first democratic government. Even the gas dwellers from the Outer Rim are sending delegations." He pulled up a holographic display showing the rapidly expanding network of free worlds. What had started as Earth's desperate defense had become a galactic revolution. Species that had been conquered and enslaved for centuries were throwing off their chains and demanding the right to choose their own destinies. Lieutenant Kim Dae-ho approached from the Military Coordination Center, where he now served as Director of Peacekeeping Operations. His job was perhaps the most challenging, taking former Imperial military forces and transforming them into peacekeepers who protected freedom instead of enforcing oppression. "Captain, the integration programs are exceeding all expectations," Dae-ho reported. "We now have mixed crews on over 200 ships. Former Korthak warriors are working alongside humans, Andromedans, and even former slave species. They're learning that protecting others feels better than conquering them." The transformation hadn't been easy. Many former Imperial officers had struggled with the concept of serving those they had once oppressed, but gradually they were discovering that cooperation felt better than domination, that being respected was more satisfying than being feared. Zek listened to all of this with fascination. "I am beginning to understand," he said slowly. "In the Empire we believed that strength came from everyone following the same path. But you humans show that true strength comes from everyone choosing to walk together, even when they could walk apart." Through the observatory windows they could see the construction of new ships, vessels designed not for conquest, but for exploration and protection. Human creativity combined with alien technology was producing wonders that neither species could have achieved alone. "Who would have thought," Dae-ho mused, shaking his head in amazement, "that the most powerful weapon in the galaxy would be the simple idea that everyone deserves to choose their own destiny." Captain Jinwoo gazed out at the stars, where former enemies now worked together to build something unprecedented. Ships that had once brought terror now carried teachers, scientists, and diplomats to worlds that were tasting freedom for the first time in millennia. In the distance, he could see Earth blue and beautiful and free. His daughter Hannah was down there somewhere, growing up in a galaxy where she could choose to be anything she wanted. The coffee shop owner in New York was serving customers who might include aliens learning about human culture. Children were playing in parks while overhead, former enemy ships protected their right to play in peace. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy through superior firepower or advanced technology. They had liberated it through something far more powerful: the unshakable belief that every being, regardless of species or origin, deserved the freedom to choose their own path through the stars. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Building a galaxy based on choice instead of force would take generations, but looking around at the former enemies who had become friends, at the cooperation blooming where once there had been only conquest, Captain Jinwoo knew that humanity had given the galaxy something precious beyond measure. They had given it hope. The end. But Engineer Sora understood exactly what was happening. "Captain, the Korthak have built their entire civilization on logical progression and hierarchical thinking. They've conquered other species by overwhelming them with superior organization and technology. But human art is pure emotion and creativity. It doesn't follow logical rules. Their minds literally can't process it." The human fleet continued their cultural bombardment. Van Gogh's swirling stars mixed with traditional Chinese calligraphy. African tribal masks danced with Russian ballet. Indigenous Australian dot paintings merged with modern digital art. The entire spectrum of human creative expression poured into the Korthak data networks. Lieutenant Dae-ho suddenly looked up from his console with alarm. "Captain, we're getting Surrender signals from over 6,000 enemy vessels. But Admiral Zektar's flagship is still active, and he's trying to rally his remaining ships. On the main screen, they could see the massive Death's Whisper struggling to maintain position. Its bio-organic hull was pulsing erratically, and several of its weapon arrays had gone dark. But the ship was still dangerous, and Admiral Zektar was still fighting. He's more resistant than the others, Sora observed, studying her readings. Probably enhanced mental conditioning from years of command. The art is affecting him, but not enough to disable his ship. Communications Officer Minji suddenly straightened at her station. "Captain, I'm detecting something new. The Korthak are trying to establish a communication channel. They're requesting ceasefire on all frequencies. Multiple alien vessels are powering down their weapons," Hayok confirmed, his voice filled with amazement. "Sir, I think they want to talk." But Captain Jinwoo wasn't satisfied yet. The music had disrupted their coordination. The art had overwhelmed their logical thinking. But there was one more element of humanity that he wanted the Korthak to experience. The one thing that made humans truly unique in the galaxy. "Not yet," he said quietly, his eyes fixed on Admiral Zektar's struggling flagship. "They need to understand what makes us really different. Prepare for Phase 3. The final phase of their strategy would be the most powerful weapon in humanity's arsenal, something so fundamentally human that no other species in the galaxy had ever truly grasped its significance. Something that would not just defeat the Korthak Empire, but transform it forever. The real battle was just beginning." Captain Jinwoo took a deep breath as he faced the main display. The time had come for the most dangerous gamble in human history. Communications open a channel to the entire Korthak fleet, all frequencies, maximum broadcast power. Park Minji's fingers danced across her console. "Channel open, Captain. Every ship in their armada will receive this transmission." The bridge fell silent as Admiral Zektar's image flickered to life. The reptilian commander looked nothing like the confident conqueror from hours before. His yellow eyes were bloodshot and confused. His scaled skin had taken on a sickly pale color. Behind him, the bio-organic bridge of his flagship pulsed erratically, its living walls twitching like something in pain. "Human!" Zektar's voice cracked as he spoke. "What sorcery is this? What have you done to my fleet? My warriors float helpless in space. My ships refuse commands. My perfect armada lies in ruins." Jinwoo stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying the weight of 8 billion human souls. "Admiral Zektar, we haven't destroyed your fleet. We've given your people something your species has never experienced in 10,000 years of conquest." "Lies," the alien commander hissed, his claws scraping against his command throne. "You have used some kind of mind weapon, some technological virus to corrupt my crews." "Not technology," Jinwoo replied. "We've given them choice." The word seemed to hang in the air between them. On Zektar's bridge, several Korthak officers stopped what they were doing, their reptilian heads turning toward the transmission in confusion. Engineer Cho Sora's voice came through the comm system from the engine room, barely containing her excitement. "Captain, the quantum transmissions are working perfectly. We're not just sending data anymore. We're transmitting the actual concept of individual freedom directly into their bio-neural networks." Lieutenant Kim Daeho looked up from his tactical display with amazement. "Sir, the results are incredible. Korthak ships across their entire fleet are breaking formation, but they're not fleeing or attacking randomly. They're making deliberate decisions." Navigator Yoon Hyok pulled up ship tracking displays that showed something unprecedented in galactic warfare. "Captain, look at this. The Korthak destroyer. Bloodfang just powered down its weapons and is broadcasting surrender signals. But the cruiser Deathstrike is trying to retreat back to their home system. And that group of frigates over there, they're actually moving toward our fleet with peaceful intentions." Admiral Zektar's eyes widened in horror as he processed what he was seeing. "Impossible! My warriors are bred for obedience. They follow the hierarchy. They serve the Empire." "They did serve the Empire," Communications Officer Minji observed, monitoring the flood of incoming transmissions. "But now they're choosing to serve something else, themselves, their own consciences, their own dreams." The concept was so alien to Korthak, thinking that it was literally breaking their military structure apart. For 10 millennia, Their species had operated under the hierarchy, a rigid caste system where every individual's role was predetermined from birth. Warriors fought, workers labored, commanders led, and everyone obeyed without question. The idea that an individual could choose their own path was not just foreign, it was impossible, but humanity had made it possible. "You don't understand," Jinwoo continued, his voice reaching every Korthak ship in the fleet. "Your empire has conquered 67 species, but none of them were truly free. They submitted to you because they had rulers who could surrender for them. But humans are different. Every human chooses for themselves." On the tactical displays, the transformation of the Korthak fleet continued. Ship after ship was making individual decisions about their fate. Some surrendered, others tried to flee. A few even approached human vessels with requests to defect. Sub-Commander Theknol, Admiral Zektar's second-in-command, suddenly spoke up. "Admiral, I am receiving strange thoughts. The humans speak of choosing one's own destiny. Is such a thing possible?" "Silence," Zektar roared, but his authority was cracking. Across his bridge, other Korthak officers were exchanging glances, their bio-neural implants filled with new and impossible ideas. Engineer Sora's readings showed the incredible scope of what was happening. "Captain, we're not just transmitting the concept of choice, we're showing them what it means. Every human story, every act of rebellion, every moment when someone chose to stand up for what they believed in, it's all flowing into their consciousness. The stories of human freedom were overwhelming the Korthak neural networks, tales of slaves who chose to rebel, workers who chose to strike for better conditions, soldiers who chose to refuse immoral orders, citizens who chose to speak truth to power. The entire history of human struggle for individual liberty was flooding into minds that had never conceived such possibilities. I'm detecting massive neural changes across their fleet," Sora continued. "The Korthak brain structure is actually adapting to process these new concepts. They're learning to think as individuals, instead of as parts of a collective." Navigator Hyok suddenly looked up with alarm. "Captain, Admiral Zektar's flagship is moving, but not toward us, it's heading for the retreating ships. I think he's trying to stop his own crews from defecting." Indeed, the massive Death's Whisper was pursuing several Korthak vessels that had chosen to flee rather than continue the battle. Energy beams lanced out from the flagship, striking ships that had once been part of Zektar's own fleet. "He's firing on his own people, Lieutenant," Deho exclaimed. "The Admiral is attacking ships that chose to retreat." "This is it," Sora announced from her station, beginning transmission of Project Jazz. What erupted from the human ships wasn't the expected missile barrage or energy weapon assault. Instead, the vacuum of space filled with something the Korthak had never encountered, the wild, unpredictable sounds of human jazz music. Miles Davis's trumpet wailed across the battlefield. John Coltrane's saxophone spiraled through complex improvisation. Thelonious Monk's piano danced in patterns that defied mathematical prediction. The effect on the Korthak fleet was immediate and devastating. "Their bio-neural networks can't process it," Sora shouted excitedly, watching her readings. "Look at these scans. The Korthak integrate their nervous systems directly with their ship computers. They've evolved for perfect order, rigid hierarchy, predictable patterns. Jazz is pure chaos to them, organized chaos they can't understand." On the main screen, the impossible was happening. Korthak ships began to stutter in their movements, their perfect formations wavering like heat mirages. Admiral Zektar's flagship, the massive dreadnought Death's Whisper, suddenly veered off course and fired its main guns at one of its own escort vessels. "The music is creating feedback loops in their neural integration systems," Sora explained, her fingers flying over her console. "Their brains are trying to find patterns where none exist. It's like giving a computer a logic puzzle with no solution. They're overloading." Navigator Hyok watched in amazement as a group of Korthak cruisers began firing on each other, their crews apparently unable to distinguish between friend and foe. "Captain, their entire left flank is in complete disarray. They're shooting at their own ships." But the humans weren't done. As the jazz continued to broadcast, each Earth ship began adding their own local music to the mix. The Harmony transmitted Korean traditional music mixed with K-pop. The Phoenix added Mexican mariachi bands. The Aurora contributed Indian, classical ragas. Soon, the entire electromagnetic spectrum around Earth was filled with a wild symphony of human cultural expression. The Korthak fleet, designed for conquest through overwhelming force and perfect coordination, found itself facing something it had never encountered in 67 previous invasions: creative chaos. Their biomechanical ships, evolved to respond to the rigid thought patterns of their reptilian crews, couldn't adapt to the unpredictable rhythms and harmonies of human music. "Enemy vessel approaching fast," Deho suddenly called out. One Korthak destroyer had broken through the musical chaos, its captain apparently more resistant to the effects. Energy beams lanced toward the Harmony, forcing Hyok to throw the ship into another evasive spiral. "Minji, boost the jazz transmission directly at that ship," Jinwoo ordered. The communications officer targeted the approaching destroyer with a concentrated burst of bebop jazz. The alien vessel immediately began spinning out of control, its weapons firing wildly into empty space as its crew lost the ability to coordinate their actions. "Captain, I'm detecting massive neural overloads across their fleet," Sora reported. "Their biointegration systems are shutting down to prevent permanent brain damage. Ships are going dead in space." Indeed, across the battlefield, Korthak vessels were shutting down their weapon systems and drifting helplessly. Their crews, overwhelmed by the cognitive dissonance of human music, were unable to function in their technology-dependent environment. "This is incredible," Minji whispered, monitoring the alien communications. "Their commanders are trying to give orders, but their crews can't follow them. The music has broken their ability to think in the rigid patterns their technology requires." Lieutenant Deho pulled up tactical displays, showing the amazing transformation of the battlefield. "Sir, over 3,000 enemy ships are dead in the water. The rest are firing randomly or trying to retreat. Their perfect formation has completely collapsed." But even as victory seemed within reach, Jinwoo knew this was only the beginning. The Korthak Empire was vast, and they would adapt eventually. However, humanity had just proven something important. Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the biggest gun or the strongest shield. Sometimes it's the ability to think differently, to embrace chaos instead of fearing it, to find strength in unpredictability rather than order. The battle for Earth was far from over, but for the first time the humans had hope. Admiral Zektar gripped the bioorganic command throne of his flagship as the bridge around him pulsed with sickly green light. The living walls of the ship seemed to writhe in pain, their neural networks overloaded by the strange human transmissions. His yellow eyes blazed with fury as he watched his perfect armada fall apart. "Sub-Commander Theknal," he roared at his second-in-command, a smaller reptilian creature whose scales had turned pale with stress. "Shut down all communication arrays. Block these transmissions." "Admiral, we cannot." Theknal hissed back, his claws clicking frantically against his biomechanical console. "The humans are broadcasting on frequencies we didn't know existed. Their signals are somehow penetrating our quantum-encrypted networks. Our ship minds." Zashi confused. Around them, the bridge crew of the Death's Whisper struggled to perform their duties. The Korthak had evolved as a hive-mind species, their thoughts naturally flowing in organized patterns. The chaotic jazz music had disrupted their mental harmony, leaving them unable to think clearly or coordinate their actions. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Harmony, Lieutenant Kim Dae-ho watched his tactical displays with growing excitement. "Captain, we've got over 4,000 enemy ships completely disabled, but look at this. Some of their vessels are starting to filter out the music. Their technology is adapting." Captain Jinwoo studied the readings. True enough, several Korthak ships had managed to restore partial function by isolating their bio-neural networks from external input. Their movements were sluggish and uncoordinated, but they were still dangerous. "They're learning to resist the music," Engineer Cho Sora announced from her station. "Their ship AIs are creating buffer zones between their crews and our transmissions. We need to move to Phase 2 before they fully adapt." Jinwoo nodded grimly. They had hoped the music would be enough, but the Korthak were proving more resilient than expected. All ships, Initiate Operation Renaissance. Begin cultural data transmission. Across the human fleet, specially modified communication arrays came online. But instead of broadcasting music, they began transmitting something far more complex, the entire repository of human artistic achievement. Paintings by Van Gogh swirled through space as digital information. Shakespeare's sonnets danced alongside Basho's haiku. The sculptures of Michelangelo merged with Aboriginal Dreamtime stories. The effect on the Korthak was immediate and catastrophic by Saw. "The Void!" Sub-Commander Teknal screamed, clutching his elongated head as images of human art flooded his consciousness. "What are these impossible things?" On his command screen, Admiral Zektar watched in horror as Picasso's Guernica appeared. Its fragmented faces and twisted forms completely alien to the Korthak understanding of reality. The reptilian commander's mind, evolved for linear thinking and rigid hierarchy, couldn't process the emotional chaos embedded in human expression. "Their art makes no sense," another Korthak officer wailed, staring at a transmission of Jackson Pollock's paint splatters. "Where is the order? Where is the logic? How can random marks on a surface have meaning?" The living walls of Korthak ships began to convulse as their bio-neural networks tried to understand human poetry. Emily Dickinson's verses about death and eternity caused system crashes. Maya Angelou's powerful words about freedom created feedback, loops that shut down entire ship sections. Communications Officer Park Minji monitored the alien transmissions with fascination. "Captain, their crews are experiencing massive cognitive overload. Listen to this. They're trying to categorize our art using their logical frameworks, but human creativity doesn't fit into their rigid thinking patterns." Indeed, across the Korthak, fleet chaos was spreading like wildfire. Ships that had managed to resist the music were now completely overwhelmed by exposure to human artistic expression. The aliens, who had conquered 67 civilizations through superior technology and organized warfare, had never encountered anything like human imagination. Navigator Yoon Hyok pulled up visual displays showing the battlefield transformation. "Sir, look at their formation patterns. They're not just breaking down, they're moving in completely random directions. Some ships are just drifting, their crews apparently paralyzed by our cultural transmissions." On the Death's Whisper, Admiral Zektar watched his empire's greatest fleet fall apart before his eyes. A transmission of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, combined with images of the Sistine Chapel ceiling, had caused 3 of his dreadnoughts to shut down completely. Their crews, overwhelmed by the emotional complexity of human art, had simply stopped. "Functioning, how is this possible?" he demanded, his voice cracking with desperation. "Art is meaningless, creativity is chaos. How can it be a weapon?" Captain Lee Jinwoo gripped the command chair as the massive alien ship filled the viewport. The thing was enormous, easily 10 times the size of their largest Earth vessel. Its dark metal hull bristled with weapon ports that glowed an ominous red. Behind it, thousands more ships stretched across space like deadly stars. "Status report," Jinwoo called out, trying to keep his voice calm. His crew needed to see confidence, even if he felt anything but confident right now. 37. "Earth defense ships in formation, sir," reported Navigator Yoon Hyok from his station. The young officer's hands moved quickly across the holographic controls. "The Harmony, Phoenix, Aurora, and Defiance are leading the charge. All other vessels are maintaining defensive positions around Earth." Lieutenant Kim Dae-ho looked up from his tactical display, sweat beading on his forehead. "Captain, their weapons are unlike anything in our databases. Energy readings are off the charts. One shot from their main guns could probably take out 3 of our ships." Engineer Cho Sora wiped her hands on her uniform and turned from the systems. "Console. Sir, I've been monitoring their technology signatures. Their ships run on some kind of quantum energy source we've never seen before. Our weapons might not even scratch their hulls." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's engines. Through the massive windows, Earth hung below them like a blue jewel. Cities sparkled on the night side, while the day side showed green continents and white clouds. Somewhere down there, 8 billion people were going about their lives, most, not even knowing that first contact with aliens was happening right above their heads. Jinwoo thought about his daughter Hana, probably asleep in Seoul right now. He thought about the coffee shop owner in New York, who always smiled when he visited. He thought about the kids playing soccer in the park in São Paulo he'd seen on his last shore leave, all of them depending on the 37 ships that were about to face impossible odds. Communications Officer Park Minji's console lit up with incoming signals. "Captain, we're receiving transmissions from the Korthak fleet. They're demanding immediate surrender, no negotiation." The main screen flickered, and suddenly the bridge was filled with the image of something that looked like it had crawled out of humanity's worst nightmares. Admiral Zektar stood nearly 8 feet tall, his reptilian skin a sickly green color with darker patches. His elongated head held yellow eyes that seemed to glow with their own light. Rows of sharp teeth filled his mouth when he spoke. "Pathetic. Humans!" the alien hissed, his voice carrying a strange harmonic quality that made everyone on the bridge uncomfortable. "I am Admiral Zektar of the Korthak Empire. Your species has exactly 1 hour to surrender unconditionally." Jinwoo stepped forward, facing the hologram. "I'm Captain Lee Jinwoo of the Earth Defense Force. What do you want with our world?" Zektar's laugh sounded like metal scraping against stone. "What we want? We want what we have taken from every other species in this galaxy. Your world, your resources, your people as slaves. The Veltari tried to resist us with their energy shields. We crushed them in minutes. The crystalline beings of Zerion thought their diamond ships were unbreakable. We proved them wrong. The gas-breathing Nethers believed their speed would save them. It did not." The alien commander gestured with a clawed hand, and the display showed images of devastated worlds, burning cities, destroyed fleets, and worst of all, beings in chains being loaded onto transport ships. 67 species have bowed before the might of the Korthak Empire, Zektar continued. "Your technology is primitive. Your ships are toys. Your weapons are jokes. Yet you dare to stand against us with 37 vessels against our armada of 10,000. Behind the admiral, the bridge of his ship was visible. It was a nightmare of organic-looking technology fused with metal. Korthak officers worked at stations that seemed to pulse with their own life. Everything about their technology looked wrong, as if they had taken living creatures and turned them into machines. Engineer Sora whispered, "Captain, look at their biotech integration. They're using living neural networks to control their ships. That's why their response times are so fast." Lieutenant Deho studied the tactical readouts. "Sir, intelligence reports suggest they've conquered civilizations that were centuries ahead of us technologically. The Andromedans had plasma weapons that could melt asteroids. The Centauri Alliance had ships that could bend space-time. None of it mattered." Navigator Hyok pulled up star charts showing the path of Korthak conquest. "They move through space like a plague, Captain. Every system they touch becomes part of their empire. No species has ever successfully resisted them." "Admiral." Zektar leaned closer to his transmission device, his yellow eyes seeming to stare directly at Jinwoo. "You have 1 hour, human. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Your strongest will serve as slaves in our mining colonies. Your smartest will work in our research facilities. Your children will be raised as servants to our offspring. This is mercy, more than we have shown other species." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in heavy silence. Everyone looked at their captain, waiting for orders that seemed impossible to give. Fight and die or surrender, and watch humanity become slaves to creatures from their darkest dreams. Jinwoo looked around at his crew. These people had trained their entire lives for this moment, never really believing it would come. Park Minji, who could speak 12 languages and had joined the Space Force to communicate with other species, though none of them had imagined first contact would be like this. Kim Daiho, whose tactical genius had won every simulation but never faced real aliens with impossible technology. Cho Sora, whose engineering innovations had pushed human spacecraft to their limits that now seemed pathetically small. Yoon Hyok, who could navigate through the most complex star systems but had never faced an enemy that could fold space itself. They were just humans, people with families and dreams and fears. But they were also the last line of defense for everything they loved. The captain straightened his shoulders and activated the communication system. When Admiral Zektar's image appeared again, Jinwoo met those alien eyes without flinching. "Admiral Zektar," he said calmly, "humanity respectfully declines your generous offer." The first Korthak energy beam missed the Harmony by mere meters, leaving a glowing scar across the blackness of space. Captain Jinwoo felt the heat wash over the bridge as their ship rolled away from the attack. Through the viewport, he could see the alien armada moving forward like a wall of death. 10,000 ships in perfect geometric formation, their weapons charging with deadly light. "Evasive maneuvers now!" Jinwoo shouted as navigator Yoon Hyok threw the ship into a spinning dive. The Harmony groaned under the stress, but her engines held strong. Around them, the other Earth defense ships began their desperate dance of survival. Lieutenant Kim Dae-ho's tactical display lit up like a Christmas tree. "Captain, they're targeting us with everything they've got. Energy cannons, plasma torpedoes, some kind of molecular disruptor beam. Our shields won't last 5 minutes against this barrage." Through the chaos, Engineer Cho Sora's voice crackled over the comm system from the engine room. "Captain, remember what we discussed. The plan has to work now, or we're all space dust." Jinwoo nodded grimly. For months, Sora had been working on something that the military brass had called crazy. She'd studied every piece of Korthak technology they'd recovered from scout ships, analyzing their neural interface systems and biomechanical integration. What she'd discovered had shocked everyone. "All ships, this is Captain Jinwoo," he broadcast to the Earth fleet. "Execute Operation Harmony. Scatter formation, maximum evasion. Prepare for unconventional warfare." The 37 human ships suddenly broke apart, like a school of fish being attacked by sharks. Instead of maintaining formation and trying to fight head-on, they spread out across the battlefield in seemingly random patterns. The Phoenix corkscrewed through a cluster of enemy vessels, her captain threading the needle between their massive hulls. The Aurora used Earth's gravity well to slingshot around the planet, emerging behind a group of surprised Korthak destroyers. "They're confused," Communications Officer Park Minji reported, monitoring enemy transmissions. "Their command structure can't adapt to our scattered approach. They keep trying to reform their perfect battle lines, but we're not where they expect us to be." The Defiance suddenly appeared from behind an asteroid, firing not weapons, but something else entirely. Captain Rodriguez's ship had been fitted with Sora's special equipment, massive speakers and transmission arrays that could broadcast across multiple frequencies simultaneously.